Hi friends, I'm Rainy. This is Rainy Day Reads, and today I want to jump on the bandwagon to do the Victorian Literature Book Tag. And this was a tag that was apparently made by the hosts of Victober last year, and that was before I was on BookTube. So I thought it would be fun to give you my answers to this tag and maybe try to do it every year and see if any of the answers change. Now, some of them, of course, will probably remain the same just because history is history and you can't change it. But I'm thinking that the more Victorian literature I read, the answers to this may change. So let's get to it, shall we? Okay, so question one is the one that is never going to change. It is, what is the first Victorian novel that you ever read? And I had watched a lot of other BookTube versions of this tag, and a lot of people said Jane Eyre. I don't think that I ever read Jane Eyre in high school. I don't think that that was part of my reading requirement in high school. And so I had to think about this for a while, and I think that the Victorian novel that I first read during high school was Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. I did not like this book in high school, and having recently reread Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens for this Victober and really enjoying it, I think that I'm going to give Great Expectations another shot, possibly before next Victober, because that's a project I want to work on for 2020. But that's a different video. Question number two is, what is your favorite Victorian novel? And at this point, it is hands down and probably forevermore. But who knows, there's a lot of Victorian novels out there. Wives and Daughters by Elizabeth Gaskell. This was the first book that I read for Victober last year, before I was a booktuber. But I had been watching BookTube and had heard Kate from Kate Howe gush about this book. So I was really intrigued because I'd never heard of Elizabeth Gaskell. And I read it for the read-along that they were doing for it and absolutely loved it. I also listened to it on audiobook at the time, and I don't know if it was partly the narrator that I thought was so good that helped me love this story, but the story itself is just everything I love in a Victorian novel. It was humorous, it had great, well-rounded characters, it had a lovely love story, and everything about this, I love it. Question number three, who is your favorite Victorian author? And again, we're going to say Elizabeth Gaskell, which was a shock to me, because like I said before last October, I had never even heard of Elizabeth Gaskell. But since then, I have read North and South and Cranford, also by Elizabeth Gaskell, and I really enjoyed both of them. So there has not been a book yet by Elizabeth Gaskell that I have disliked. So I am fairly confident at this point that Elizabeth Gaskell is my favorite author of Victorian times, possibly of all time. I don't know. I'd have to think about that, but I don't want to make that claim just yet. But definitely for Victorian literature at this point in my life, Elizabeth Gaskell. Question number four is your favorite Victorian literary couple? Before I say what it is, I don't want to give any spoilers. So if you have yet to read Cranford and you want to read it, skip this question. Because I am going to say that my favorite literary couple is Miss Maddie and Mr. Holbrook. It was just so sweet. And I cried. I probably cried actual tears in that storyline. I just loved it so much. So, and then if you've ever watched the Cranford Chronicles, which is the miniseries that was it's based off of Cranford and some other Elizabeth Gaskell short stories, which I haven't read yet. The way they do that love story in there just made it that much more heartbreaking. And I loved it so much. So, yes, as of this moment, Miss Maddie and Mr. Holbrook are my favorite literary couple. I would like to apologize if you hear a lot of stuff happening in the background. Apparently, it is lawn care day at my townhouse. Okay, question 5 is your favorite Victorian villain? And I had to think about this because I can't say that any villain is my favorite. Um, and most of the Victorian literature that I read and that I enjoy doesn't have like a truly villainous character in it. So the only two that I could actually think of that has specific villain characters would be Wuthering Heights or Oliver Twist. And I I thought about those villains and I decided that my favorite is Bill Sikes and Monk from Oliver Twist. I don't know. There was just something about Heathcliff that I really, really, really hated. And Bill Sikes, while I hate him, and he was very mean and, you know, he beats Nancy and he beats his dog and just is a horrible human being. I just felt like his character as a whole was more well rounded than Heathcliff. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I chose Bill Sikes also because I have more of a history with Oliver Twist and that storyline. So Bill Sikes is just more in the forefront of my mind right now. Plus, I just read Oliver Twist. Question 6. Your favorite book where somebody dies of consumption? Ooh. This is that little inside joke thing that they had going on last year that everyone dies of consumption. Or there's always a character in every Victorian novel that dies of consumption, which is, I think, pretty accurate. I can think of most of the Victorian novels that I've read. There have been at least somebody that has been mysteriously sick and, yeah, probably has died. So, there in my viewing of other people's book tags for this, a lot of people said Jane Eyre, which that one was very, very, very sad. But the one that I chose, to me, was even more heartbreaking because it lasted longer and the character was so sweet and yeah, it was really heartbreaking. Was in North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. And I felt like that the character who dies in this was a big catalyst in a change in Margaret and how she viewed the lower classes and how she just viewed life in general. And the character itself who died was just a very good person, and it just made it extra sad that she didn't get to live the life that she should have been allowed to live. So, and that the industrialization of the town was a contributor to her death, which was even more sad. Question 7 is the longest Victorian novel that I've read. And there are quite a few very long Victorian novels. That was a thing back then. I had to really think about this. I went back to my Goodreads and scanned all of the Victorian novels that I've ever put in there. And what I came up with, which I had forgotten was as long as it was Can You Forgive Her by Anthony Trollope. I think that one came in at about 900 some pages. And I actually ended up listening to that one on audiobook. and it was like a 30-hour audiobook, which I've never read, never listened to an audiobook that's been that long. Yes, that was the clear winner when I looked up all of my longest books for Victorian literature. Clear winner. The second closest was Middlemarch by George Eliot. Question 8 is a Victorian author or book that you feel is underrated. And for this one, I chose a book that we have been listening to as a kind of group read for Knit and Listen, and that's Adam Bede by George Eliot. George Eliot is obviously not an underrated author, but I don't think that a lot of people know about Adam Bede. I'd never heard of it before, which isn't saying a lot because I'm still a relative newbie when it comes to Victorian literature. But yeah, I just finished it yesterday, and it was just really good. It took a while to get started, but after it got started, it got really good. So I feel like that is definitely an underrated book. George Eliot is kind of a hit or miss with a lot of people, I feel like. But this one, if you can kind of get past the first half, which is slower, it's still interesting, but it's slower. The plot gets really good and intense towards the last third or fourth of the novel. For question 9, I could not pick a favorite. It says, what is your most beautiful Victorian novel that you own? And I have started a very small, so far, collection of Victorian novels that I really enjoy. And so I just thought I would just show them to you because they're all beautiful to me. And I can't pick a favorite. It's like picking your favorite child. And I don't have children, so I can't pick a favorite book because they're my children. So, quickly, we have North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell, which is a Penguin English Classics edition. I think, yes. Oh, Penguin English Library edition, I'm sorry. We have Wives and Daughters, which I already showed you, also a Penguin English Library edition. I just think this is lovely. I just recently got The Adventures of Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass, and it has these wonderful hot pink flamingos on them. Just stunning. This might be my favorite, honestly. Don't tell others. Then we have Cranford by Elizabeth Gaskell. I just love this lime green color. So festive. Then we have Oliver Twist, which I feel like is very subtle and understated, but beautiful in itself. Then we have the Wuthering Heights in the Penguin Deluxe Edition, and this is by Emily Bronte, and I just like, the whole thing is just beautiful. I need more of these. And in the same edition, I have Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. Also very beautiful. And the last Victorian novel that I own that I think is beautiful is Far from the Madding Crowd by Thomas Hardy. And it's got a lot of gilding on it. I found this at my local Books-A-Million, and I probably at some point would like to get this in a Penguin Cloth Bound Classic or a English Library edition. But this was like the first Victorian novel that I got, and I just liked its small little size. But as I'm kind of a collection completist, there would be no other ones that I would know of that would be this small, so I would probably get it in one of these editions later on in life. So these are all the pretty collections that I own at the moment. So it's a very small collection. Needs to be bigger. But I need to get another bookshelf before that can happen. So, but yes, they are all beautiful to me, and I cannot pick a favorite, although that one might be my favorite, or maybe one of these. I don't know. And the last question, question 10, is 3 Victorian novels that you have yet to read that you want to try. And for that, I have picked Olive by Dinah Mullet Craik, I believe is her name. And this one just sounds really interesting to me. It is about a woman with some physical deformities and how she kind of makes a life that she enjoys, um, because even though she is not like your typical um, Victorian lady who can get married. I guess because of her physical deformities, people say she's never going to get married, so she has to try to figure out something else to do with her life. And that just sounds very interesting to me as an unmarried lady. Also, I want to read Mary Barton by Elizabeth Gaskell. I actually would like to complete all of Elizabeth Gaskell's novels, since the 3 that I've read so far have all been gold stars for me. But Mary Barton, I believe, is the next one that I want to tackle from her. And also Villette from Charlotte Bronte. I have just been hearing a lot about this book, and the Brontes are another group of authors who I would like to complete all of their novels. And they didn't write a ton of books, so I feel like that is doable within the next year or so, that I could probably complete all of their novels. But I think Villette is the next one I would like to try. So I hope you enjoyed hearing all my answers to this tag. We'll see if next year, if any of that has changed, and how big this stack of collectible Victorian classics has grown in the next year. So, and that just makes me really excited for another year of BookTube. I'm coming up on a year in December, at the end of December, that I've been on BookTube, and I'm really enjoying it so far, and I am excited about the year of 2020. So, all right, friends, I hope you are having a lovely end to your Victober. Let me know what you are reading right now, or what you have just finished, or what has been your favorite Victorian novel for this month. And yeah, or if you have done this tag, tell me about it so I can go watch it. All right, I'll talk to you later, friends. Bye.